Hello everyone, and welcome back to Why Not Read Some Books. And in today's video I am doing part 2 of discussing Walking in My Joy in These Streets from Jenifer Lewis. So just to recap from part 1, In These Streets, The Black House, and then Demonetized. One thing that I didn't mention for In These Streets, it talked about her opportunity or being approached, having the opportunity to have her own spin-off show from Blackish. And while she always wanted to have her own show, she realized at this point in age and in her career that wasn't the best thing for her to do. So I didn't really talk about that on the first video, but I did want to highlight that she did have that opportunity. But in today's video, I'm going to talk about Mickey Mouse is canceled, F for Lurona, and then there's a poem which you should check out, a spoken word, and then Dumbass Nancy, and then there's another poem, We're Going to Be Alright, and then Age of Innocence. So 4 chapters, so this video may be a little bit longer than the first one. And now that I know what was the purpose of this picture, once you get the book, if you haven't gotten it already, or get to these chapters, you'll reflect back to this picture, because I was wondering like what in the world was going on. And also I kind of like marked off things that I wanted to kind of highlight from the different chapters. So I also kind of marked off certain things that I wanted to highlight in each chapter. The first one is Mickey Mouse is canceled. So Mickey Mouse is canceled starts off in 2020. She has surgery to repair a rotator cuff. I'm saying that right. And she goes to the hospital, have the surgery, gets released, go home. She is feeling better, go back to work and everything. And then she noticed something about the side of her face. So when I think she fell asleep or something like that, and then when she woke up it was even bigger. So she was freaking out, being melodramatic as the person she is, but I understand because she's in front of the camera, so you know, like, her face is her money. So she went to different doctors and everything. So she called she went to her acupuncturist, who ended up telling her that it was an infection and that she needed to go to the hospital because it was somewhere deep. They were able to, you know, do what they needed to do to repair it. So that's where the picture at the beginning of the book comes from. It stems from that story. If you haven't read it, I'll let you, go ahead and read that. But if you have read it, down below, let me know your thoughts on this particular chapter. I found it to be very hilarious because how she was with the nurses and the nurse's aide and lusting over the doctors. I can just picture her talking to those people that way, and how she interacted with the doctors and everything. So she's saying that, she heard about there being a virus going around in China. She didn't pay no mind. She didn't pay attention to it. She just knew Donald Trump was always on the news. But then next thing you know, one of her doctor friends called her while she was in the hospital and was like, look, you need to go. You need to get up out of there. So she called her nephew to come get her. And the nurses and stuff were like, where are you going? She was like, no, I got to get up out of here. So as she's leaving, she noticed that the city is like a ghost town. Everyone, there's like no one on the street. And that has her kind of like nerved up. But what hit me in this particular chapter is when she says, if one of us is sick, we all are. And when you apply that concept to politics and everything else, you get a sense of how much trouble we are in a world community, or in as a world community. I screamed so loudly I even startled myself. The whole world stopped on us. Believe this, Jenny. Take this in. This shit is truly happening. It's real, baby. I whispered to myself. She felt empty, as a lot of people did, and having to quarantine and isolate affected a lot of people's mental health. So moving on to the second chapter that I want to discuss, and that is F, Flurona. F, you know, is a cuss word. I just don't want to mention it on my channel. So in this particular chapter, her nephew Jason decides, hey, we don't want you to go through this by yourself. My wife and our kids are gonna come stay with you, make sure everything is straight. We just don't want you to go through this virus or pandemic alone, because no one at that time knew what to expect, because she was thinking that this would be over with within 2 weeks. Well, we all know it was not over in 2 weeks. So her nephew and his boys come. She talks about how she felt protected because they were there. She also talked about how they kind of messed up her house. I'll let you, read further into this chapter. I love the fact that she names each of her rooms. She has Africa, she has Egypt, she has the dungeon, and she has Butters. So yeah. Also, at a period of time, there were no filming being done, but then once people realized how they can do work, she was called back to Blackish, social distancing, 6 feet, wear your mask, do all that good stuff. So this particular chapter focuses on just her family coming to her and being with her during this troubled time. Also in this chapter, she talked about different celebrities, friends that she knew that caught COVID, and how it kind of was a little bit more closer to home than what she thought. She was very helpful to Brandy and stuff, and it just kind of opened up her eyes to what was going on in the world at that time, because we were just at a loss. You would hear different stories each day, then you would hear about death each day, or this person caught COVID, this person caught COVID, the hospitals are over extended, we need everyone to stay inside, don't travel. It was just a hot mess during that time. Also in this particular chapter, it kind of hones in on the mental toll that COVID took on people, and I was shocked. Because I don't follow Kathy Griffin, but I didn't know that she kind of attempted to take her own life, and how out of everyone she called Jenifer Lewis, because she didn't know how many sleeping pills she took, and how Jenifer Lewis helped her, but then the next day she was, her old self, and basically cussed out. Kathy Griffin told her, baby, look, get yourself together, get in therapy, go to rehab, but don't call her no more. She can't deal with that. So what I took from this particular chapter in regards to her helping Kathy Griffin was when she said, Kathy, I love you. I'm glad it was me you called. But baby, I don't have time for this kind of shit. Everybody knows you've been through hell, but everyone's going through hell right now and in the middle of this pandemic. You don't get to quit, B. There are women who have fought great fights and didn't quit. Did Jane Fonda quit? Did Harriet Tubman quit? Did Ruth Bader Ginsburg quit? Nobody dies on my watch. Now gather yourself, call your shrink, and get your skinny ass in rehab, like I said. Hurting yourself ain't gonna help nobody. So just to read these chapters in her voice, in her mannerisms, I'm gonna have to get her first book and read that for sure. Also in this chapter, she talks about there was no stability. Sitting at home alone forces us to confront the things our constant society of motion hid us from. We were subjected to looking at ourselves in the mirror And when we didn't like what we saw, there was nowhere to go. No more running, and the stillness has shown us our sickness and made us confront our own personal issues and pain. That was deep. Then there's a poem about wearing your mask. I like this poem. Excuse my background, my TV. It has a lot going on until I move into my permanent setup. So hopefully that's not distracting you guys. Now, moving on to Dumbass Nancy. This story here was hilarious. Oh, and if I didn't mention, the drink for tonight is not wine, because I'm not really into wine, even though wine is in the title. But this is a little vodka and raspberry lemonade for Simply Lemonade. Yeah, and I already sipped some of it. Very tasty. So, Dumbass Nancy is about Jenifer Lewis in the airport, and she's about to take a trip, and she runs into someone that she hadn't seen since, I want to say, the late 80s or so. So that made her reflect on a story. So this particular trip was in the 80s, and they were going to a gig, and they was playing around, and Nancy tells the stewardess, be careful, she has a gun. And then Jenifer Lewis is like, I'm innocent. But they're joking around. Evidently, the stewardess did not think it was a joke and actually reported it, I don't know to whom. So they're sitting on the tarmac, the plane isn't moving, and she's wondering, like, what is going on? SWAT comes from the back of the plane, I think the front of the plane, and then they're pointing the guns at her and telling her to get up and get off the plane. And she's like wondering, like, what's going on. And so she was like, she the one who said it about Nancy. So they escorted Nancy off and everything. So once they investigated, checked, I guess, her bags and everything, they ended up taking Nancy down to the precinct. So she hadn't seen Nancy since that arrest. And then she ran into her on her way to Bali in 2019. Also, in this particular chapter, she talks about when she got to Bali, how this was a solo trip, but there was a knock on her door, and there was Keisha from Blackish. I don't know who Keisha is, but somehow, some way, she got to Bali, and she knew about it because just talking about it in passing, that Jenifer Lewis was going there, so she just took multiple flights. All in all, is because she had left her husband and was on an emotional roller coaster. So Jenifer Lewis was there for her at that particular time. And it also talks about the different cruises and excursions she went on and how she was able to experience other cultures and other countries. So I think that that would be an interesting, you know, chapter to read. Now, this last chapter is very, very, very deep. And I could tell from when I was reading the first couple of sentences where it was leading. And I knew it was probably very emotional for her to even write this particular chapter. But before I go into that, I just want to read this quote that she has. Do not feel lonely. The entire universe is inside of you. And that is from Rumi. And then there's a poem that says, we're going to be all right. And I'm going to read this one to you. The other poems I want you to read. One time, one nation, one people. We're going to be all right if we stand as the people. We're going to be all right if we trust we're the people. We're going to be all right if we rise. We're going to be all right if we trust we're the people. We're going to be all right if we rise as one people. So Age of Innocence talks about her relationship with her cousin. You know, everyone has that cousin that you always, you know, with you. They're like your best friend. You tell them all your dark secrets, you know, from childhood even to adulthood. So this particular cousin was named Ronnie. when I was starting to read this, and when she would start talking about how they played with dolls and how he would dress up the dolls and how he would tell her to, you know, have the doll's hair, and they played with Barbie dolls. And I instantly knew that he was going to be gay, which is nothing wrong with that, because there's just nothing wrong with it. But reading that, I can kind of see where things were leading. It talks about how people in the community were very mean to him, and especially in the church, and those who were not perfect themselves treated him bad. But as her career progressed, she would bring him to New York. He enjoyed New York. When she moved to California, he moved to California. When they had the earthquake, he went back home. But Ronnie was there throughout her entire career. He did her hair. He helped her with her lines when she was on Broadway, even if she was doing other type of shows. He even was able to open up his own salon at her house and was doing high profile clients, even the people in the neighborhood. And then his heart was broken because he was in a relationship with someone who did not tell their family that they were, you know, involved with the same sex. So that broke his heart. And then he ended up going back home. Well, throughout all of this, Ronnie was sick. AIDS epidemic was, you know, had people on edge, and for some reason they associated gay men to the disease. And so speaking about it was very taboo, or, you know, you're frowned upon. Of course, at that time, people wasn't very educated on it. And so a lot of people were very ignorant when it came to that. But again, you know, when you learn more, you do better. So one thing I liked about their relationship was how protective they were of each other. Like, they were like Bonnie and Clyde. And she was saying, as wonderful as their relationship was, she was number two and his mom was number one. You couldn't play about his mom. So when Ronnie's boyfriend did not, you know, I guess come out to his family and kind of like hid him, that crushed him. And so he went back home. And not too long after that, he invited her to breakfast at Jinkies. It was like a farewell breakfast, because a year before his brother had hung himself and Ronnie wanted to go home and be with his mother. I felt like, you know, he just wanted to be close. Even though him and Jenifer Lewis were close, it's nothing like your mother's love, your mother's care. So that's probably why he wanted to go back home. And then, of course, he knew he was sick. So she's saying that 6 months later, while she was campaigning for John Kerry, that she received word that Ronnie was in a coma. And of course, Ronnie ended up passing away, and that completely like shattered her soul. So this chapter really talks about the innocence, the age of innocence, how Ronnie really impacted her in regards to career-wise, family-wise, emotions. You can just tell that, you know, she really missed him. And what I got from this is she grieved Ronnie for a long time. Everybody talks about the good days. She says she lost someone she trusted. She lost someone to protect. She lost someone who protected her. And then there was a loss of innocence, like I said. So that chapter was very deep for me and to me, but I think that it is a good read so you can understand the dynamic of her family and especially of her cousin. And also in the book, he referred to her as Aunt Jenny because of the age difference. I think they were like 12 years apart, but he was her cousin. And when I read that, it kind of resonates within my family as well, because my mom's first cousin, her name is Virginia, but we all call her Aunt Jenny. So that kind of like made me feel like, okay, we're not weirdos because we call her Aunt Jenny, even though she's our cousin. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on the chapters thus far. If you haven't gotten this book, what are you waiting for? I want to have discussions. Let's talk about this book. Get this book, catch up, because part 3 will more than likely be posted on Monday the 13th, no later than Tuesday the 14th, because I want to dive into our second book. So again, don't forget to subscribe, get your book, and until we meet again,